New York State Court just issued a ruling that could have huge political consequences for who wins control of the House of Representatives next election. But before we look ahead, look back with us to the last election, specifically here in New York State. Ahead of that one, the 2022 contest, Democrats in this state redrew congressional maps, but they tilted the districts so heavily in the party's favor that a court threw the maps out and instead put a neutral expert in charge. That person redrew districts so competitively that Republicans flipped 4 seats, ultimately handing the Republican Party the majority in the House and Kevin McCarthy the gavel. We're going to work on the lights. But now Democrats have a chance to try once more. A state appellate court just threw out the maps again, a major win for the party. We're going to explain what happened, because if that ruling stands, the Democratic Party has a serious shot at retaking the House next year, especially since the needs of frontline Republicans, the moderate ones who won, like those here in New York, are being sacrificed by Kevin McCarthy to appease the conservative wing of the party. Case in point, the myriad amendments that were added last night to the House's version of the defense budget, a lot of them focusing on culture war issues like abortion, diversity, critical race theory, transgender medicine, and COVID vaccines. So what does the Democratic Party do now? And what does Kevin McCarthy do now? Let's bring in NBC News senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake and MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Rubin. So, Lisa, explain this court's ruling throwing out the maps once again.
The court, Katie, has basically decided that the solution that the New York Court of Appeals, that's New York highest court, reached right before the 2022 election was never meant to be a permanent solution. It was only meant to be temporary. And therefore, they threw it back to the mechanism established in New York State's Constitution. That's a bipartisan redistricting commission that not only gets 1 bite at the apple, but 2 bites at the apple before it reverts to New York's legislature to draw its own map. However, in 2022, that redistricting commission deadlocked, and that's what allowed the legislature to step in and perhaps overreach in a way that the Court of Appeals then said, no, your maps are no good either, and we're going to give it to a neutral expert. This gives that redistricting commission another opportunity to draw the maps before what experts think is really going to happen. The legislature is going to get the ultimate opportunity to draw the maps itself. That obviously depends on New York's highest court agreeing with today's decision, Katie.
And they'll obviously have to learn their lesson and be a little bit more careful about how they redraw those maps. What is the likelihood? I mean, the Republicans are appealing this. What's the likelihood of a successful appeal?
I actually think the likelihood of a successful appeal is high, and that's because the composition of New York's Court of Appeals has changed. Since the last time this was before the court has a new Chief Justice, Rowan Wilson, who is considered to be far more progressive than his predecessor, and has a new judge or justice as well, Caitlin Halligan, my former colleague who was previously New York Solicitor General and was an Obama nominee to the D.C. Circuit before she was filibustered by Republicans back during the Obama presidency. So I think the odds are fairly good that the New York Court of Appeals will agree that on the strict text of the Constitution has to go back to the bipartisan redistricting commission. And if they fail, then it goes back to the legislature itself, Katie.
All right. So, Garrett, the political significance of this, what is it?
Well, it's huge, potentially. I mean, the reality here is if you were looking at a 2024 election with Donald Trump on the ballot, he's such a turnout machine for Democrats. Democrats might have been able to win back some of these lost seats anyway in New York fairly easily. But in maps that would be more favorable, you're looking at a potential pickup of perhaps all 4 of those seats that Democrats lost, depending on how they draw the maps, maybe even more. I mean, you can basically reverse the House Republican majority on New York State alone. If you imagine a situation where Mike Lawler and D'Esposito, George Santos, and these are the 3 members off the top of my head who could all of a sudden see their districts much changed in Democrats' favor. So there's a potential to be a big deal here. And by the way, this isn't the only state where this is happening. There's liable to be new, much more Democrat-friendly districts in Louisiana and in Alabama that could change the maps, although there's going to be some more Republican-friendly districts in North Carolina. The reality here is the House just so narrowly divided. All of these at the margin kind of toss-up districts could end up being make or break for the party in power in the next cycle. So every little bit of this matters, and who draws the maps and essentially the politicians selecting their voters here will have a big say on who then selects the politicians in the next cycle.